VGMP.
Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new episode of VGMP DLC Edition, where we take bite-sized looks at video game adaptations, and today we're going back to the 1990s to Animation Land as we look at a failed pilot for Bubsy.
Bubsy will be right back, for crying out loud!
For those who don't know, Bubsy is a series of platforming games, originally 2D side-scrollers, before making an ill-fated jump to 3D on the PS1. Bubsy the Bobcat was designed to be a rival for characters like Mario, Sonic, etc. The idea being that he was a wisecracking, sarcastic, meta character who broke the fourth wall. In actual fact, his games were, at best, mediocre, and at worst, some of the worst games ever made. I'm looking at you, Bubsy 3D, which I had the awful misfortune of it actually being one of the first games I ever had on my PS1.
Right.
And it is nigh unplayable. I've never finished it. Sometimes when I feel like abusing myself, I think I'm going to play it on an emulator so that I have the benefit of save states, and then I turn it on and literally play 30 seconds before I remember what a terrible, awful game it is. Honestly, look up Bubsy 3D if you don't know about it.
Yeah.
No, it looks awful. It doesn't play well.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Yeah, it's an awful game. The Bubsy games on the Mega Drive is what I've played. I haven't played the 3D one, but I do know how renownedly crap it is. The first two were better, but let's be honest, they weren't smash games either. Essentially, they tried to steal mostly from Sonic than Mario by having, where Sonic was the hedgehog with attitude, they tried to do that again for Bubsy the Bobcat, but the difference was, rather than him just being basically just kicking all sorts of arse, what they'd went with instead was he was a wisecracker, and wisecracking usually came in the form of puns, which, as much as Jamie loves puns, they're generally not considered the highest form of comedy.
They're the worst.
Why do you keep doing them then?
I don't. You do.
Yeah. Even then, even if you like puns, they're often awful puns anyway. Yeah. And basically the gameplay would be 2D games where he would just not shut up while you were playing. To be fair, that element of the character accurately ported into this pilot.
This is blatantly a tax evasion scheme of some kind. How they thought they were going to get an entire series out of Bubsy the goddamn Bobcat, which, by the way, none of what's in this, to be fair, I haven't played the two Mega Drive games.
Yep.
But certainly Bubsy 3D, absolutely nothing from this show is in Bubsy 3D.
No. So, this was made in 93, so it would have been before Bubsy 3D. Okay, I'll do a slight rundown on some trivia I've got, because I think that will contextualise some of this production.
Okay.
So, this was initially done as a TV broadcast as a pilot. The pilot was sponsored by Taco Bell.
I think that sums up everything we need to know. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Rob Paulson, the man who voices Bubsy, has gone on to state that he absolutely regrets voicing Bubsy in this cartoon. A bit like Dennis Hopper and Bob Hoskins regretted Super Mario Brothers the movie. To be fair, this was very much of its time, people regretting their 1993 video game adaptation work. The title, What Could Possibly Go Wrong, is said 8 times in the TV version and 10 times in another release of it called the Super Bubsy version. I'll get to the separation between those two in a minute. Bubsy's creators hated this pilot, which includes the company, which is Accolade, who owns Bubsy. They actually paid for this because they wanted to see if a pilot could work. And one of the creators of Bubsy and Bubsy 3D was a man called Michael Berlin, and he stated that the Accolade developers were cringing while watching the pilot, despite not having despite being involved in the production. Though he dislikes the cartoon, he enjoyed the characters. In an interview with Sega 16, he said, "I thought it was extremely clever. It did a nice job of playing on Bubsy's name, and the characters were all Bubsy-like. While the art direction was not what Bubsy was all about, it was at least interesting. Bubsy's original art direction was an interpretation of the Fleischer cartoons of the 1920s and 30s. The rounded bouncing alive cars and objects was what I wanted, and after a lot of work was accomplished. The TV pilot had a more southwest angled feel, and that was okay since the sponsor was Taco Bell. The attitude and wisecracks were Bubsy though. What do you think about the idea that this is a clever pilot?
This is clever in the same way that Joey Essex is clever. Which is to say, not.
No. I do not see what was
this
clever.
Is the dumbest piece of shit ever. What he means by clever is, he's got some puns that work. Like, all the villain's called Ally, and she's a cat, so she's an alley cat. Oh, and the buzzard's called Buzz. Oh.
There's also a character called Sid the Vicious.
When?
Sid was the
rat.
The shrew, yeah, that they kept calling a rat, but his full name was Sid the Vicious.
I hate this. I hate everything about this.
Yeah, it's honestly, this is all the worst puns ever rolled into a pilot and going, here, Jamie, enjoy.
This is as bad as the Legend of Zelda thing we watched.
Well,
excuse me.
I'd say this is worse, because, I don't know, actually, because...
It's not, because I only had to watch one of these.
Yeah, that's true. But somehow, so they stated what could possibly go wrong 8 to 10 times, depending on the version you watch. Even Legend of Zelda only said, well, excuse me, princess, twice an episode. Imagine, the benchmark was so low.
They're also making... He also says the phrase for crying out loud multiple times. I didn't count.
We didn't count those ones.
It was at least 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. The writer of this, just to destroy any of you people who are younger than me, who watched cartoons growing up a bit younger.
Don't tell me it's like Matt Groening or someone legendary.
The writer is Ray De Laurentiis, who wrote a very popular TV cartoon for people not my age, but much younger.
Younger than you? How much younger? Like my age or even younger than me?
Your age, probably younger than you.
I'm going to guess...
I think Benton has mentioned liking this show before, but I could be wrong.
I was going to guess Ren and Stimpy, but that's
No, way newer than that.
Way newer than that, okay.
Similar sort of art style, but newer.
Adventure Time.
Nope.
Gravity
Older
Falls.
than that.
Oh.
You're getting close, though.
Foster's Home for Imaginary something or others?
No, and I don't even know what that is.
Okay, one last guess and then I'll give in.
Yep.
Fairly Odd Parents.
Fairly Odd Parents! The writer of Fairly Odd Parents wrote this absolute waste of garbage.
Well, that makes sense, because that's also garbage.
Yeah. I know, but it's got such a huge fan base.
Yeah, I know. A largely adult fan base, which is a little creepy.
It is very creepy.
But then again, we are 2 grown men who just gushed over Chow in Space, so...
Chow in Space is infinitely better than Bubsy.
But we're still grown men.
And Fairly Odd Parents.
But we're still grown men who enjoyed watching Chow in Space.
Because it was fun and cute.
We're men, Rory.
I'm fair.
We're men.
I did find a worse line in this, other than what could possibly go wrong, which is just an awful, which we could also add because it's fucking. But it's more so it's bad because it's repeated.
Yeah.
This other line is only said once, and the innuendo is fantastic. What could be more troublesome than helmet hair? This is said because the main story, if you can fucking call it that, is an inventor has created a helmet where...
You say the pun. Go on, I know you want to.
I actually don't know what you're talking about.
The inventor's name is Virtual Reality.
Oh, yes, it was, wasn't it?
And he's invented a virtual reality helmet.
Yeah. Even I was like, I'd squeegeed that out of my brain. Basically, he's developed this helmet where if you think of something and blink twice, it happens. A what-if machine, essentially. He puts the thing out there for any old idiot to come and try it. Bubsy turns up with 2 nephews and a niece and nephew in tow, and an armadillo friend that he just literally spends the whole show abusing. I can't remember the armadillo's name. The armadillo was Arnold, the armadillo. They turn up and hijinks ensue. There is a cat, a rich cat, who's shown to be fat, but when she looks at herself in the mirror, she sees herself as slim, who has a Buzzard and a Shrew as her servants. Really, the Buzzard is a servant. The Shrew is just there to be like a Baldric-esque character. Some scummy person who just wants to keep eating. And she wants the helmet for some reason. Eventually, the whole narrative breaks down because it starts off, the kids get the helmet, they blink twice, and everyone ends up on a roller coaster, and everything keeps coming back to the bloody roller coaster. Eventually, once the story starts to get towards its conclusion, the helmet is being used by everyone. Whenever someone blinks a new idea into existence, the whole scene will change. They'll move location, but all of a sudden they can just almost walk back into the previous scene with no control from the helmet or anything else.
There's no logic established with the helmet.
No, and so it literally makes no sense. There's a bit where everyone except the Buzzard is stuck in a pot being cooked alive by the Buzzard, and then two of the characters just somehow walk out of it, I guess.
And then go back in it.
And no, they attack him, and that ends that scene. But it's like, we don't see them getting out of the pot. And they get there so quick that the only way that they could have gotten through is to pass through the actual side of the fucking pot. The fact is, the minute this starts, you get the Bubsy musical intro, which is awful as well, to be honest.
Way too long.
Way too long, and it's because it's introducing what a zany character he is. So he tries to brush his teeth by putting toothpaste on like some circular buffing
it's
electrical...
a buffer thing,
yeah. But he doesn't end up doing it.
A very bad attempt at trying to do Animaniacs.
Yeah.
We're Animaniacs.
Which is ironic, because there's only 6 voice actors in this, and several of them did Animaniacs. Some have done The Simpsons. Some have done Futurama. These are skilled voice actors, but they've just been given absolute garbage. I'm hoping they were paid a lot, which is why they're here.
Oh, of course they
I would
were.
hope so.
It was the 90s. Voice actors were paid shillings.
Yeah, it's true. But as soon as the intro titles finish,
it goes on a break,
it cuts to credit. We'll be right back.
Literally goes on a break straight after the opening theme tune.
Yeah, there's not even like a cold opening before the theme tune. It's literally just theme tune. Oh, we'll be back after these
But
messages.
this is an epidemic in American television.
Yeah.
This is a 22-minute episode that goes on break twice.
Yes. At least, I think it's 3 times, actually.
That's even worse. Then.
Yeah, I think
in
it breaks
Britain,
3 times.
If this aired in Britain, it would only go on break once.
Yeah.
If that. Some channels only go on break once every half an hour, don't they?
Yeah.
Some go
every 15 minutes, I think, is the average in the UK.
Right.
So this would have had 1 break in it.
Yeah, unless you're like the BBC, where you obviously don't have any breaks.
Yeah, of course.
It's mental. It is an epidemic on... I actually just listened recently to... oh, God, why's my brain gone dead? It was an interview with Stephen King.
Yeah.
On the Postmortem podcast. And he was talking about all the times he's written for TV. He wrote an episode of The X-Files, for example, and he's obviously written some miniseries as well. And he was talking about how writing for television, almost in a way that no other medium does, forces you to become a master of structure.
Right.
Because you have to... And pacing, because you have to write to the commercial breaks. And he was saying that in America now, he was on about a miniseries he did way back when, and then one he did more recently. And he was like, back then, in an hour, you'd go on a break 4 times every 15 minutes. He goes, it's up to 8 times an hour now. You're going on commercial break in America. Man. So basically, you have to treat every 8 minutes
as a break,
as a part.
That's awful.
So you're writing to 8 tight minutes.
That's awful.
Honestly, there's no wonder commercial TV is dying in America.
Yeah,
and people are moving to streaming.
Yeah, they're killing themselves.
But the problem is they're having to have that many adverts to be able to get the budgets high enough to compete with streaming. Yeah. It's kind of become a self-fulfilling prophecy at this point.
The other problem is there's some streaming services such as Amazon, and I think Disney are looking at it as well, which are introducing... you can pay to stream from them as normal, but at a certain lower level of lower tier, you still get adverts.
Netflix are doing that.
Yeah, Netflix can fuck off with that. Honestly, I'm paying for your service already, I'd like imagine paying for a service and still having to watch ads. The whole point of streaming was to be more
I'm going to be
accessible.
I'm going to be a little bit controversial here.
Okay.
As an audience member, streaming has been up to now, where now there's suddenly 1 billion fucking streaming companies. When it was just Netflix and Amazon,
Yeah.
streaming was fucking fantastic for an audience member.
Yeah.
Because I pay $9.99 a month for my Netflix.
Yeah.
Right? And it's got shit tons of stuff on it. Great. As a creator, streaming has been an absolute almost killing blow to the industry. Because now the general public in their minds literally think, well, for the mere price of $9.99 a month, I should have access to hundreds of TV shows and thousands of movies. And the problem now is we are going to experience this when we go into production on our next film, whatever it ends up being. We used to pay what, £10 per DVD?
Well, yeah, 10 to 15, yeah.
Yeah, for a single film
Yeah.
on DVD. That's not even special editions and collector's editions and things.
Yeah.
Now, you try getting most people to pay £10 for a single film.
Yeah.
And I watched an interview with Matt Damon where he was saying that's the reason. Do you remember, we always lament this, don't we? Mid-budget films don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
You're either teeny tiny indie budget or you're Marvel.
Yeah.
According to Matt Damon, the reason that middle bit's gone is those middle bits, they never made their money back at the cinema. The cinema run was just for fun, basically. They made their money in home video sales.
Right.
They don't make that now because streaming has devalued everything.
Right.
So you would make more money releasing your mid-budget film and people buying it on DVD than what Netflix will pay you to let them stream it for a year.
Right.
And that's where I now come into a weird thing, because part of me thinks, as long as they don't put the prices up ridiculously, actually, let's say my $9.99 one is the one that they go, right, that's it, you're going to have commercials now. Do you know what? I can live with it. I'm still getting lots of content for only $9.99.
Right.
I can live with commercials for that. If, however, they go, okay, the commercial one is going up to 20 quid and the non-commercial's 100 quid a month or something like that,
Yeah.
then I would be like, okay, this is a problem.
Okay, I kind of see your point, because you're paying £10 a month for the content, but you're getting, even if you take it as just a single piece of media, which you wouldn't get for £10 on a streaming network, you get lots, you're not technically owning the product.
Yeah, and that's where there is a problem, because they can delist things.
Yeah, and obviously they do, because they have certain contracts that run out. Certainly if they don't own a product, even if they kind of own a product, even if they half own it, they have to lose it. Like Netflix made several Marvel series, they've been delisted.
Yeah,
because even though they own the
Disney
series,
made its own.
Well, yeah, because they owned the series, but they didn't own the brand, the brand name, and Marvel owned that, and then Disney were like, well, we'll take that back, thanks very much.
Yeah.
So, yeah, now we're getting into the realm of lost media, which is a bigger discussion to be had in and of itself, but at least I can see your point. The difference is, though, it depends on how the streaming services will deal with that, because even if we accept commercial breaks at $9.99 a month, how many? And how much frequency?
That is the problem. You then could end up... to be honest, what you needed, but I don't know how you would do this legally, streaming was better, as in it worked out cheaper than, say, cable packages, back when you only needed Amazon and Netflix.
Yeah.
The problem is, someone did add it up. If you want to actually get everything now, you're paying more than you were paying on cable.
Yeah, definitely.
The problem is monopolies are illegal, but what you almost need is a law that says there can only be one or two streaming services. But you're not allowed to do that because that's illegal. The other thing that's an issue as well is that...
Well, you just need multiple groups to, like, for example, Paramount, Disney... Well, not Paramount and Disney necessarily, but you know what I mean? Disney on its own, because it's big enough as it is, and they've already bought everyone else out.
Yeah.
Paramount, MGM, and Amazon, since Amazon own MGM anyway, they just combine, or they combine their streaming to fund extra shit.
Hasn't HBO just merged with one? They've merged with Warner Brothers, I think
so.
haven't they?
Warner Brothers never had its own streaming service, though, I don't think.
They set up a DC one. There was one called DC Universe, yeah. The other thing is...
Sad Act paid just for DC Universe, especially since the DCEU was literally garbage.
What Sad Act paid for Paramount when it's got nothing on it but Star Trek and it ain't got half of that?
No, I'll tell you what, the only reason I have Paramount...
Halo for this.
Yeah, and also Knuckles when that comes out soon. The reason being is because for the show, though.
Otherwise,
I wouldn't have
bothered. Off as a business expense, do you think?
Yeah, I could do, technically, I suppose.
You'd have to prove, though, that you didn't use it for anything else, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
The only other problem is, and then I'll get off this subject, is kind of fans, and I know that's a touchy subject when it's like, you can't blame fans for things. Fans are always innocent. Well, they're not, are they?
No.
I mean, fans are the reason that the cast of the last Resident Evil film all had to leave Twitter because they were abusing them. Fans have reached a point where they won't accept cheap TV anymore. They want TV to look like a Marvel blockbuster, and you're like, guys, Doctor Who's budget, it's obviously just been taken over by Disney. The budget's gone up to 10 million per episode.
That's fucking ridiculous.
I don't need Doctor Who to have 10 million per episode.
No, and also here's the problem. Like, while you might think on the surface, well, that's surely better because you get higher budget, glossier, better episodes. Actually, a lot of the best episodes in TV are written as bottle shows. They're ones where it's like, we need to save money, so you've got to focus on quality of writing, drama, character study. That's what you have to do. When you've got massive budgets, you don't have to worry about any of that shit.
The problem is...
And that's the problem. That's the problem with a lot of the Marvel shows.
And the problem when everything's got big corporate budgets is everything becomes this amalgamous grey goo. You watched you watched for me, the 60th anniversary Doctor Who specials. In that third one, the last one, why is Avengers Tower in London now?
Yeah.
Unit have always been based under the Tower of London, as far as I'm aware, in Doctor Who.
Now they've got a new base.
All of a sudden, they've got a base that looks exactly like Avengers Tower.
Yeah.
You might as well stick the great big whacking A on the side of it.
Yeah.
Like, I was literally watching it going, oh great, is Iron Man going to turn up?
Yeah.
Fucking Thor?
Also, it neuters the amount of actual, like, meaningful stories you can tell, because with such a high budget, every episode has to make such a high return, so they have to be nebulous. They have to be a one-size-fits-all, which means they're all generic and the same.
Yeah.
You don't get, like, a story that just talks about this subject really strongly, because that would put off fans.
And this is why, I'd love to have Benton on, because this is an argument me and Benton have. I'm a fan of the, obviously, big age gap between me and Benton, I think 7 years.
And I'm 5 years above you, so there must be 12 between me and you.
Yeah. I'm a fan of the old American 24-episode seasons.
Yeah.
Because don't get me wrong, you do get a lot of filler and a lot of shit. But it also allows them the freedom to experiment and do things like a musical episode of Buffy, an episode of X-Files that's black and white and is a retelling of Frankenstein, an episode where they go, is it possible? There's an episode of X-Files that's all shot in one unbroken take because they were just like, let's try it, let's see if we can do it. Yeah. That's wonderful. They get to experiment with concepts like that, or like you say, do an episode of fucking Star Trek where they just go, for this one episode, fuck the rest of the crew. We're going to really focus in on Wesley Crusher, let's say, and really explore what his life's like. Nowadays, because everything's becoming the let's release it all in one go and it's only 6 or 7 episodes
long,
there's no such thing as standalone story anymore.
No.
It's just everything's part of the main arc. And that's great. I love a good main arc. But give me some shows that are episodic.
Well, the thing is people now state that won't sell, but you know that's not true because you've got.
I know it's not true. We were told that Haunted would tank.
Yeah.
Because we did we did the old X-Files model, where we mixed episodic with long-form storytelling. And touch wood, don't get me wrong, the show is not for everyone. Some people don't like it at all, and they've told us so in very unkind words. But lots of people really like the show and have written to us. They've said some absolutely wonderful things that I never thought anyone would ever say to me ever about how much the show means to them and stuff like that, proving that there is still an appetite.
Yeah.
for that sort of storytelling.
Yeah.
I like being able to play something in the background and not be worried that I'm going to miss vital plot details.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I agree. Yeah, and that's I think that's being forgotten in modern TV. Back to Bubsy.
Why?
I don't know. This pilot is very episodic. You can tell that there'd be no long-form storytelling in this. Why would you?
Other than I imagine Ali would be like the recurring villain.
Yeah, but I mean that's just standard in a cartoon series of this era. Honestly, like, I'm not even sure this would have been made nowadays. Like, I'm trying to think like this would have been made nowadays because it's got terrible humor. It's very much like Star Trek Lower Decks. The humor is terrible. It doesn't work, and it's based on a bad premise. But
this is way too annoying.
See, here's the thing. I feel the same about Star Trek Lower Decks. Actually, there's a lot of that this has in common with Lower Decks.
Right.
It thinks increasing the volume of someone's dialogue equals funny. It's manic. It doesn't stop. It doesn't have any arc. The characters don't go anywhere. Yeah, I'd say actually, in a weird way, this is very modern. Not in how it looks very dated.
Yeah.
But in the fact that it's just a non-stop roller coaster that ends up making no fucking sense. I'll tell you what, Star Trek Lower Decks is a massive hit for Paramount.
Yeah.
I do not understand why. This is like an episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. Exactly the same.
Obviously, I've never seen Lower Decks. I've heard loads of people tell me Lower Decks is the best Star Trek that there is at the minute.
Yep.
Now, granted, that's not high competition, I don't think, from what you've told me.
No, but I mean, out of all of the series, it's the one that does the least amount of Star Trek.
Yeah.
Again, this always depends upon what you come to Star Trek for.
Yeah.
So, like, there are some people that like the fact that it's more magical, I suppose. But I prefer that when it's more like harder science.
Yeah.
So, me and the person who is after the more fantasy elements would probably have a different view of what makes Star Trek Star Trek. There are some people that don't like things like Discovery because they're like, Star Trek's all preachy, it's never meant to have a message behind it. And you're like, have you ever seen the original series?
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, most of the time, though there are some bad examples in all of the different Star Trek iterations, generally Star Trek told those stories better than they do now because they tended to have a bit of give and take. There'd be, what is the counter-argument, or they just establish what the problem is and let you sit with it. Whereas modern Trek tends to go, this is a problem, why don't you understand it? That's different. It's a different type of writing. Lower Decks, though, does the biggest sin for me, which is Star Trek is always supposed to be a character-driven... It's meant to have something worth saying. Lower Decks doesn't ever have anything of value to say. It doesn't try and tell an interesting story. It doesn't try and have a morality tale, whether episodic or long form. It doesn't try and do anything that's actually interesting. All it's involved with is
trying to make you laugh.
Trying to make you laugh with humour that doesn't work for me, but that's a personal preference. I'll accept that. But the other thing is what it does to try and grab fans, and what I hate is that it works, to how fickle people are. The way it grabs fans isn't based on the quality of the show. Far from it. It grabs fans because it throws in as many Easter eggs and callbacks as possible.
Yeah. Towards the end of his run, that's what Chris Chibnall started trying to do on Doctor Who.
Yeah.
He just started crowbarring references and, like, returning companions in.
Yeah.
And you were like, but it's very clear you're doing this because the ratings are plummeting.
Yeah. And even though the ratings aren't plummeting for Lower Decks, it is that same vibe.
So I'd like to wrap up by talking a little bit about platforming games.
Go on, then.
So I said Bubsy was mediocre.
Yes.
I want to talk about lesser-known platform games. So you've kind of got your most famous platformers, which are, of course, Super Mario, Sonic the Hedgehog,
Zool.
A little bit... What the fuck is Zool? There is no Dana, only Zool. Later on, you had Spyro the Dragon and Crash Bandicoot.
Who's Spyro?
Shut up. But I want to talk about... And Bubsy's a lesser-known one. I want to talk about some of the lesser-known ones. Like, did you ever play... I don't think you did, because it would have been...
I played Zool. That's a real one.
What's Zool?
Zool is the ninja from the Nth Dimension, my friend.
That sounds so bad. What console's that on? Sega Saturn?
No. It's earlier than that. It
Mega
was
Drive.
Amiga, Mega Drive, SNES.
Right.
But the best one was the Amiga, because of the soundtrack.
Right. Well, I'm trying to think of lesser-known ones I played.
That is a lesser-known one.
Talmit's Adventure, which I gave you the horror
Christ.
of playing.
Yeah.
That was on the Sega Mega Drive.
Yep.
That's a weird one. You do a boss fight where you play rock, paper, scissors against the boss.
Yep.
Did you ever have the misfortune of playing... I don't think you would have done, because I'm pretty sure it was PlayStation exclusive. Did you have the misfortune of playing Croc Legend of the Gobbos?
Not that... I do know of Croc, because it came out on Saturn and N64 as well.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if Legend of Gobbos did. I don't know if it was the first one it did. I think after Croc 3D was on the Saturn.
I thought there was only 2 Croc games, so...
Oh, okay.
I think Legend of the Gobbos
I haven't
was the
played
first
any
one.
of them, though, so...
I've never finished Legend of the Gobbos. It's a platformer that's all tank controls.
Right.
It's really hard to play.
Ooh, that's not good.
And what was the other one that just popped in my head? Obviously there was Mickey's Wild Adventure.
Yeah, or Mickey Mania on the Mega Drive.
Donald Duck Quack Attack.
I haven't played that one.
It turns out is a vastly different game on GameCube as it is to Game Boy Color.
Castle of Illusion.
Castle of Illusion's a belter of
and
a
its
game.
sequels.
I never played the sequels.
Oh man, Land of Illusion and
World of Illusion.
World of Illusion. I think there's 4 actually.
Oh wow!
Because there's...
How did I only ever hear about Castle of Illusion?
So Castle of Illusion was on the Mega Drive.
Yeah,
and then for some
phenomenal.
reason the 2 sequels it had were on the Master System only. And then they did the 4th
But that's
one.
a console back.
Yeah, and then they did the Master System, and then they did another Mega Drive one, which was the 4th one, which was Mickey and Donald.
I'm just making a quick phone call. 1 second. Yeah, can I talk to President Sega, please? Did you make a Mickey Mouse game and then release the sequels on an older console? Yeah, it wasn't a good console, and you deserve to go bankrupt. And I hope Nintendo buttfuck you nightly. Goodbye. P.S. I hope Capcom buy you out.
What about Rayman?
Rayman. Oh my god, Rayman. First game I ever had on my PlayStation. One of the hardest games I've ever played. Never finished it. It's ridiculously difficult. I used to love that game. Go and free the Electoons, Rayman.
Rayman 2.
Rayman 2. Rayman 2. Let's talk about Rayman 2, which is not as good as Rayman 1, but it is a lot easier. I've had the benefit of playing Rayman 2 3 times on 3 different consoles, and it's actually a different game on all 3.
Yes.
So I first played it. I actually played the best version first, which is Sega Dreamcast. Then I played...
The graphics weirdly hold up better on the Dreamcast now than they do on the PS2 or later.
Then I played the PS2 version. PS2 version's very similar to the Dreamcast version, except it cuts some bits out for some reason.
Yeah.
But then adds some bits in.
Yeah, it's otherwise a fine version of it, to be fair.
The PS1 version is actually fine as well.
Yeah.
But because it's obviously a generation back, they've cut a bunch of stuff out.
Yeah.
So obviously the graphics are a step down.
Sure.
But not too much, to be honest.
No.
But they cut out the overworld. Instead, it's literally just like a timeline, and you go level 1, level 2, level 3, and you just go back and forth on like a world map. Whereas obviously in the actual Rayman 2 on Dreamcast, it's like a world map, and you have to go find the levels.
Yeah.
And the levels are also shorter on the PS1 version.
Sure.
Not by a lot.
No.
But a little bit.
Just to trim down that, because they had to fit it on a CD.
Yeah, because it's a step back in it.
Yeah.
I did have one in my head, and I've forgotten it. Gex!
I haven't played Gex, but that was...
Any of them?
Yeah, I think that was also on the Saturn, one of those.
The first one was, which is the one I've never played.
Right.
The first one is a more classical 2D scrolling one.
Yes, it is, yeah.
But Enter the Gecko and Deep Cover Gecko are 3D. I feel like Gex is what they were trying to achieve with Bubsy and failed.
Yeah.
Because he breaks the fourth wall, he's constantly cracking wise, he's constantly making pop culture references.
Yeah.
And all of his levels are themed around specific genre gimmicks.
Yes, that was the same in the first as well.
Yeah, so like one will be like Old West, one will be horror. There's one where you go, I always remember there's a level where you're in a country manor and it's themed around Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, okay.
And Gex is dressed as Sherlock Holmes, and like you'll unlock certain doors and it'll be like elementary, my dear Watson. The one I always remember is that you get a fire shield power up.
Yeah.
And he always goes, you'll unlock it and he'll burst into flame and he'll go, can you smell something burning? I smell something burning. Oh, that's right. It's because I'm on fire! I remember the first level of Gex 3, the boss is Santa Claus, and you kill Santa Claus.
Nice. The last one I'll mention before we wrap this up is Earthworm Jim. who deserves a massive shout out. Earthworm Jim 1 and 2 are fantastic games.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what was amazing, the animation was incredible for its time, and the reason was they found ways to break down animation frames in such a way that they could reuse them for other things.
Right.
So what ended up happening was each animation was really silky smooth because it was basically, but it didn't cost any more resources because it was utilizing frames from other animations as part of its. I don't know how they did it, but it was great. But yeah, Earthworm Jim was really funny as well. You had, like, whenever you completed a level, you had two cows that were obviously a photo of two cows, and they'd just look at you. One of them would go, "Well done," and then the other one would just smile at you. It was weird, but it worked.
I used to watch the Earthworm Jim cartoon show.
Yes, Dan Castellaneta plays Earthworm Jim himself, and he is obviously more famous for playing Homer Simpson or Bye Bye Dinosaurs.
More famous for Homer Simpson.
I would say so, yes.
He's more famous for the zoo attendee did a cameo as in Friends, where he's like, "I know what happened to your monkey."
Oh yeah, he gives Ross the information. He goes, "How much is this money? How much is it worth to you?"
But you already told me everything. Damn.
There's been some great 2D platforms. Zool is one that I loved as well as a kid. The first one hasn't held up so well, but Zool 2 still holds up quite well when you can play as either Zool or his female compatriot Zoos.
They always used to do that, didn't they? In the second one, they'd had a female counterpart.
Yeah, and then there was the dog Zoon, I think his name was, who was only in the special stages. He was a two-headed dog. And basically you just played, what's the game where you bounce a ball off?
Arkanoid.
Yeah, it's basically Arkanoid, but the dog is a bat instead.
Did you ever play on your Mega Drive? This is one of the most LSD trips of a game I've ever played.
Right.
Did you ever play a game that I'm fairly certain is called Second Samurai?
Oh, okay, interesting. No.
Mate. I'm gonna have to get it on my emulator and show you. Like, this game, so you play as a samurai, as you can imagine, and you're travelling through time, but there's no explanation for why you're travelling through time, you just are. The first level, you're just hacking and slashing a bunch of Neanderthals, which obviously is no difficulty at all because you're a fucking samurai. But you end up all the way in the future. But the bosses in the game, one of them's a giant cabbage. One's a disembodied cybernetic head.
Right.
One's a dragonfly. Like a literal big dragonfly.
And you're a samurai.
You're a samurai. And the final boss, who I only ever beat once, is a big Japanese-style demon with horns and a little mustache. And he comes up, you've got 3 platforms, and he comes up behind you. And it's a bit like that Robotnik battle where you're taking off his fingers. Except you've got to chop the hands off of this demon.
Right.
Once you've chopped those off and he can't attack you with his hands anymore, his eyeballs detach from his head and start bouncing around the screen. And if they hit you, you take damage. And you have to try and defeat his eyeballs.
That sounds like some Ganbare Goemon shit.
It's weird.
Yeah, Mystical Ninja starring Goemon is another platforming game.
Right.
Yeah, fantastic. Honestly, I loved Ganbare Goemon. It's good.
Okay.
And we've got a short of that to cover at some point, as well as a series, so that'll be fun.
Fantastic.
And I've got to introduce you to Mystical Ninja starring Goemon 64, because it's mental. It's mental. Anyway.
I think we've wrapped this up, haven't we?
Yeah. I'm not going to recommend it, I assume.
Of course not.
No, screw this noise. We ended up talking about everything but because it's so garbage.
Yeah. Well, thank you anyway for tuning in. Please do save yourself and avoid Bubsy. And take a look at this sneak preview of our next VGMP.
I'm going to read the back of the box in the American. In this third and final season, Captain N, the Game Master, Mother Brain, and her forces of chaos continue to threaten the freedom of Videoland. Only Game Master Kevin Keane and the N Team, Princess Lana, Simon Belmont, Castlevania, Mega Man, Kid Icarus, and Game Boy can keep them from conquering the universe.
You're a little bit of all right, Kid Icarus. Welcome to the Merry Men.
Game over, yeah!
Cyberpunk Studios.